President Joe Biden is praising a deal with Republican lawmakers to raise the U.S. debt ceiling and avoid a catastrophic default. Republicans wanted spending cuts, which the White House did agree to, but less than Republicans originally asked for. In a national address last hour, Biden thanked all of Congress for getting the deal to his desk.
No one got everything they wanted, but the American people got what they needed. The final vote in both chambers was overwhelming, far more bipartisan than anyone thought was possible. So, I want to thank the members of Congress who voted to pass this agreement, which I'm going to sign tomorrow and become the law.
CBC's Chris Rios joins us now from NYC with more on Biden's address. So, Chris, give us the highlights.
Well, Dwight, I think the first question that everybody was asking is why this speech on a Friday night from President Biden when he was essentially not saying anything new. I mean, earlier this week, he released a statement saying as much as he said in the Oval Office. But I think after months of fraught negotiations, when you heard from both sides of the aisle, the Democrats and the Republicans sounding off, this was President Biden doing only what he could do, and that is address the nation from the Oval Office and sort of give a victory speech. He talked about cutting spending over the next 10 years, cutting it by more than $1 trillion. But what really stood out to me, Dwight, is that in this 12-minute speech, he said the word protect about a dozen times. This was about President Biden talking about the wins of his administration. He talked about protecting people who earn less than $400,000, the fact that they won't have to pay any new federal taxes. He talked about protecting important priorities like Social Security and Medicaid. He said that he would not have agreed to this deal if there were any cuts to Medicaid, another essential lifeline for millions of Americans, he said. He also said that clean energy programs that he's been championing, that's been protected. And, you know, he talked about really being able to bring both sides together. Have a listen to what he said.
No matter how tough our politics gets, we can see each other not as adversaries, but as fellow Americans. Treat each other with dignity and respect. As I've said in my inaugural address, without unity, there is no peace, only bitterness and fury. And we can never become that country.
And you know, Dwight, in this speech, as I said, only 12 minutes long, he mentioned Republican leaders. He thanked Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy, thanked Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. He said both sides negotiated in good faith. And you almost saw this image of a president putting himself in between the two parties, getting them to shake hands. You know, what's interesting about this deal, Dwight, is that it sort of removes it as an issue for the 2024 presidential election. And yet here you have President Biden sounding very much like he was giving a presidential stump speech and really pushing that Biden brand, which is the guy who can get people to compromise.
I think you're characterizing it the right way. It felt like Biden the Uniter, almost felt like a State of the Union address because he was up here on News Network for so long with that speech tonight. So, you know what? Not everybody was happy about this compromise deal. A number of lawmakers on both sides voted against it. So what kind of reaction are you hearing, Chris?
That's right. You know, in the end, the vote, let me give you the tally. 149 Republicans, 165 Democrats backed the measure in the House. In the Senate, 61 senators voting in favor, 38 opposing it. Senator Bernie Sanders wrote an op-ed saying that he could not, in good conscience, support this bill. He said this bill cuts programs for the most vulnerable and is totally unnecessary at a time when this country is rapidly moving towards oligarchy, seeing great inequality. You know, he used very strong words, echoed by Senator Elizabeth Warren. Have a listen to that.
This is about paying the ransom to a bunch of hostage takers. And that is not how we should run this government. It's not good for the people of this country, and it's not good for the position of the United States all around the world. What does it say to every country where we're out promoting democracy and how strong our alliances are, that this is what it takes just to keep our government paying its bills?
And, of course, to be expected, Dwight, several Republicans also sounding off, members of the um, Freedom Caucus criticizing Speaker McCarthy for giving into this deal when it did not go far enough in cuts. Congressman Scott Perry says, I don't believe anybody should get an unlimited blank check to spend whatever for essentially 24 months. So you're hearing those comments as well. But President Biden on this Friday night pushing this message of compromise and bringing the country together. He signs the bill into law tomorrow.
Yeah, Biden, the uniter, gets a win. Thank you, Chris. CBC's Chris Reyes in New York tonight.